Hi, my name is Irene with girltalksfish, and in my last vlog, I rehomed and sold a bunch of fish. The dwarf chain loaches in the 20-gallon tank, my Pistogramma agassizii breeding trio, as well as 21 platy fry. Now that means we have extra space to get more fish. Yay! Well, the plan was originally to give the 10-gallon breeding tank to my kids to design. But then I made the mistake of going to a fish store and I saw my next breeding project. So that meant having to talk to Gamer Boy and convincing him that maybe glow tetras wouldn't be the best idea for the 10-gallon tank. And was there another fish that he was interested in? And he said coolie loaches. He was actually really sad when I rehomed those back in the day. So I was like, all right, deal, dude. I will go look for coolie loaches. But in the meanwhile, Mom is gonna go get some pygmy corys. Now, the real reason why I went to that fish store is because they had an assortment of dwarf gouramis, and I was thinking of getting a centerpiece fish for the 20-gallon tank after Sonic didn't do so well. But dwarf gouramis, it's also 50-50 whether they'll be bullies in the community tank. So I figured, you know what? I'm gonna give the male powder blue dwarf gourami a shot, and if it doesn't work out, then I will go ahead and order a female online. However, while I was there, I noticed a tank of pygmy corydoras. First of all, if you've seen my previous videos, you know that I love corys, and pygmies are like the smallest, cutest ones, and I thought it'd be so fun to try to breed them. So they had a tank full of them, and they were all swimming together in mid-water. It looked absolutely adorable. I know they're not the most colorful looking fish, but I don't know, something about their cute little black eyes and their behavior just stole my heart, so I had to have them.
So we got our fish from the store and we're gonna bring it home. And they're called something.
Pygmy corydoras.
And they're called pygmy corydoras.
Now, I don't know about you, but I never have heard anything special about the dwarf corydoras in general. Like, they just seemed like their care requirements were pretty similar to normal corys. So I didn't think anything of it. I just took them home, put them in the quarantine tub that the platies had been in, as well as with the powder blue dwarf gourami. And then within 24 hours, I saw one dead cory. I'm like, okay, well, you know, 1 out of 10, maybe something was just wrong with that one. And then a couple hours later, another one, and then 2 more. And they were just dropping like flies. And they would have no symptoms. They were all kind of swimming together, fine, active. And then all of a sudden they would just start floating belly up near the surface and then quickly die within the course of an hour, going from nothing's wrong with me to I'm dead. And I was absolutely devastated. Now, typically when you see fish dying very rapidly like that, it's a problem with the water quality or the water parameters in some ways. So I dragged out every single water test kit I had. There was 0 ppm chlorine, which I definitely checked for because that's happened to me before. It was 0 ammonia, 0 nitrite, maybe 5 ppm nitrate. But you know, this was a kind of established quarantine tub that I had running before that was holding 21 platy fry. So it was used to having a heavy bioload. And on top of that, the dwarf gourami was doing fine. Like, he was swimming around, eating great. It was just an issue with the pygmy corys. I ended up ordering a bunch of dewormers to see maybe like, did they have a problem with parasites, but that didn't stop. None of the medications stopped any of the dying. So finally, I ended up calling the fish store, and I figured maybe they just got a bad batch in, and if I find out that their pygmies are doing badly, then I know that's not necessarily my fault. So I contact them and they're like, no, we've had these pygmies for like several weeks and they're doing great. What? When I mentioned the symptoms and the problems that I'm having, they then decide to tell me that they were actually heavily buffering their water. They were using Seachem discus buffer to lower the pH to 6.4. And I was just astonished because my pH is 7.8 to 8.0. And I was like, wow, okay. And it turns out, number 2, the reason why they were doing this is because the fish were wild caught. Now, I understand that wild caught fish, they're going to be more sensitive to parameters. And so probably from their experience, they realize that if they don't significantly lower their pH, those new pygmies that they get aren't going to do well. I just wish they had written it on the tank that they were changing the parameters in that tank, because I've never ever had a problem with any of the other fish that I've purchased from this fish store before. I think, normally you go to a local fish store to buy fish because you trust that their water is pretty similar in pH, GH, KH to your local water as well. And in this case, I was just caught by surprise for sure. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, so I'm not going to mention this fish store. And in fact, the store manager was very, very helpful in giving me some tips and tricks on how I could lower the pH in my water. But in the end, despite me getting distilled water and discus buffer and trying to match their pH at home, I was not able to keep these corys alive. If you were a member of my channel at the time, you got to see a little closer to my raw emotions at the time, but let's just say I was absolutely devastated. Made me, just having to pick up dead bodies every single morning was just soul crushing, and it didn't really make me want to play with my aquariums in my free time. They definitely got a little more neglected, and I fed the fish, of course, but fish keeping was not fun. Honestly, you should be prepared, right? When you get new fish, you're gonna have deaths, no matter how experienced you are. It's just part of the hobby, but I feel like it's something that other hobbies don't have to really deal with, the loss of life. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about that. So then I had an important decision to make. Did I want to try again with the pygmy corys, or just chalk it up as a loss? I'm never going to be able to keep them in my water, just give up on the dream. But by this point, they had really captured my heart, and I wanted to give it another chance. So I ended up Googling online for tank-raised pygmy corys. Hopefully they'll be hardier and more used to my water parameters. And I found Aquatic Life Farm. So Frank, the breeder, is really cool. He's been breeding lots of not necessarily rare fish. It's fish that you would commonly find in the local fish store, but these are all personally bred by him, and in my opinion, a lot hardier is basically why I'm willing to pay 3 times the amount for a tank-raised pygmy cory versus the store purchased one. This was actually my first time ever ordering fish online, and let me tell you what, it was quite the adventure. Like Frank, everything on his side of things, the communication was great, the payment was great, that's fine. He sent me the tracking number. It was gonna actually arrive a day early, and as soon as I got the notification that USPS had delivered the package, he also emailed me as well. So I immediately start running for the post, the box where all the mail is delivered, and I open the box and it's a Target package. And I'm like, what's going on? I know the fish are here. And I look at it and it's my neighbor's package. And I was like, oh no. So I'm like frantically texting my neighbor. I'm like, oh my goodness, I think you have my package. It's got live fish in there. It's like kind of hot, maybe like high 80s. And she didn't respond. So I ended up calling the post office, and it's kind of hit or miss whether you're gonna get someone. She said, the person I talked to at the post office said they couldn't get a hold of the mail carrier, and it was like this big, huge mess. Finally, they ended up sending another mail carrier to the box to unlock all of them and look for my live fish. And I waited at the next to the box in the heat for her. And yes, my live fish were finally delivered to me. All was good. After unboxing them, following Frank's acclimation process to the letter, I put them in the quarantine tub, and it was probably the most stressful few weeks I ever had when it comes to quarantining fish, because I was just expecting to find dead ones, every single time I looked at that quarantine tub, which thankfully didn't happen, but it was still nerve-wracking because I'm not used to having pygmy corys, so I'm not familiar with all their quirks and behavior differences. So it would freak me out when I saw that they weren't really swimming. They were just kind of laying around and not doing anything. At one point, some of them decided they wanted to lay on this fake plant I had. I'm like, is that normal? Are they running out of oxygen? So I added a second air stone to that tub. Some of them, they would like go to sleep and they would lay on their sides like a clown loach would. And I didn't know pygmy corys could do that, and it freaked me out. But as soon as I would try to pick up the dead body with my net, they would just swim away. So I guess that's a thing. I had no idea. I'm happy to report though, after going through the quarantine med trio and then some extra deworming, all 9 of the pygmy corys survived. So now it's time to play a little bit of musical chairs. So what I'm gonna do is move 3 adult platies out of this 20-gallon tank because they've produced a lot of babies. I'm kind of worried about the bioload. So I'm going to give them to my local fish store, Exotic Aquatics. Then I'm going to move my powder blue dwarf gourami, who I've named Unicron because he kind of looks like the same colors as that transformer. And then Unicron was also like a giant planet-eating size transformer. And so he's gonna be like the tank boss of the 20-gallon. He had been temporarily living in the 10-gallon while the new pygmies were in quarantine. So I moved him from the 10-gallon to the 20-gallon. Then I moved the pygmies from the quarantine tub to the 10-gallon breeding tank, where hopefully they'll be a little more outgoing because that tank is more heavily planted, there's more cover, and so hopefully they'll feel more comfortable to come out. That also means that the quarantine tub is finally free again, and so 2 months after telling Gamer Boy that he could pick fish, now is my chance to get coolie loaches from them. And so actually, yeah, 2 months ago, I had gone to Exotic Aquatics and they had just gotten a shipment of baby coolie loaches. At least they look like babies to me. I mean, these were like tiny, tiny things. And then recently when I went back, they're big and plumper, and they've definitely been obviously feeding them well. So I got a few of them and they are in quarantine now, and they're super active, and I'm not worried about them as I was with the pygmy corys. Okay, let's talk lessons learned. What did I get out of this experience? Because the reason why it took me so long to make this video is I really wanted to process kind of what went wrong and what can I do differently next time. And I would say, if you go to a local fish store, there's kind of like 2 kinds of customers. Like it's like a range, right? So on one end of the scale, you've got the customer that comes in and like just takes up all of the employees' time. They're just like asking about every single fish, like, what's this fish? How do you take care of that one? What about this fish? How do you take care of that one? What do they eat? You know, all this stuff, like how long do they live? Blah, 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 right? And on the other end of the scale, you've got like the quiet customers that kind of do their research beforehand, and they already know what fish they want, and they just kind of go in, quietly get their order, and they leave without really interacting with the staff that much. Because I had worked in customer support previously, I always prided myself in being that latter customer. You know, I was like, yeah, I'm kind of a veteran in the fish keeping hobby. I know what I'm doing. I do my research. I'm gonna get in, get out, and I'm not gonna have to bother them or waste that much of their time. However, after this experience, I've realized I need to go a little more that way on the scale and be more annoying. And what I mean is I need to do my due diligence of asking questions to the fish store employees, because just because I learned something on the internet is not necessarily exactly how they are keeping the fish, right? And so I think some definitely important questions I need to ask is, how long have you had the fish? And are they doing well? You know, the longer they've had them, the more likely they're gonna do well in my tank. My second question is gonna be, are they wild caught or tank raised? And definitely if they're wild caught, I need to be nitpicky asking like, what's the pH you're keeping them, the GH, the KH, the temperature, and then finally, what kind of foods are you feeding them? I want to be successful in feeding them exactly the same kind of food that you are, so that hopefully they'll eat well at my home and kind of gain some nutrients and build up their immune system. In fact, when I contacted Frank at Aquatic Life Farm, I basically did just that. You know, I was emailing him like, hey, here's my pH and my water parameters. I had this kind of experience with a fish store that had captive bred. What are your water parameters? And do you think your tank raised pygmy corys are going to be successful in my water? And he was so good about being, answering all my questions and being very responsive. And he was right. The pygmy corys have been successful in my home. And I'm just so glad that I took the time and he took the time to kind of meet in the middle and share that information so that I can be more successful with my fish. So I guess my main takeaway is I need to be less shy, less quiet. I need to speak up basically and just be bolder and ask those questions and get the information I need so that the fish that come into my house are going to be happy and healthy and I can do everything possible to be successful with them. If you missed part 1 of this vlog, make sure to check it out over here. Otherwise, take time to enjoy your aquariums and I'll see you in the next video. Yay! Bubble tea time!